What's your hit rate or your win rate? What's your average deal size? How long does it take you to land a new project from initial contact to signed contract? What are the key meetings that help you to get to revenue, to that signed contract? All of these questions are vital for you to be able to answer clearly if you're going to be able to drive revenue successfully. And that is the topic of conversation today with my guests, Alice Chandrasekaran and Jennifer Applin, the co-founders of Digital Magenta. Digital Magenta is focused on helping you to get clarity on your sales processes, meet and exceed your revenue targets, capture top performer intuition and your unique revenue drivers, and then take action on your key revenue drivers. This conversation today is going to be tremendously insightful for you when it comes to sales. The good news is Jennifer, Alice, and myself have decades of experience in sales and working complex deals in competitive environments. And that's exactly the kind of environment you're in as a construction company. And so I'd like you to take very good notes if you're not driving around and pay very close attention to the specific insights that Alice and Jennifer share. You're going to find them incredibly helpful. If this interview is something that you'd like to hear more of, let me know. Sales is one of my passions, and I want to help you get better at selling projects to the right clients in the right locations. And if you would like more interviews and more data around this type of topic, just let me know. Go to my website, constructiongenius.com/contact and say, Eric, more of this. Anyway, enjoy my conversation with Alice and Jennifer. Share it with other people. And thank you for listening to Construction Genius today. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Jennifer, Alice, welcome to Construction Genius.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Eric.
Thank you.
I am deeply interested in sales processes. It's something that I know has had a tremendous positive impact in my life, learning sales processes and figuring out how to fix them. I know you guys do a lot of work around sales processes. So I just want to lay some foundations here as we begin our conversation. What do you mean by a sales process?
Yeah. So when we look at sales process, we take a cross-functional view across what are all the steps that it takes for a company to attract and bring on new business, close new business, and also retain the business that they have. So we are looking at the set of activities starting on the marketing side to when an opportunity comes in, and how does the sales team then action that opportunity in the most effective way to get that deal to a close and beyond, and also manage that relationship with that new client throughout the course of their time together.
That's interesting. So in your minds, then a sales process encompasses almost every aspect of the business, from the first time a customer becomes aware of your company all the way through to their interactions with you on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. It's all the steps that a company has to take to drive revenue. And it starts before a salesperson actually gets a lead in their inbox.
Interesting.
And it lasts long after, in terms of how do we manage this relationship effectively, and how do we make sure this is a customer for life and we're servicing our customer in the best possible way we can.
That's interesting, because if you take that approach as you're describing it, then we are always selling.
Absolutely. Everyone is in sales.
Yeah, that's right. So tell me, why is it important to identify those steps and actually have a sales process in place that you're conscious of and you're actually trying to execute?
Yeah. So as companies grow, they start building the layers. So their teams are growing, they're building various processes across the company. Some of their teams may be dispersed, especially with the shift to remote workforces. So it's very, very important to identify what the repeatable steps are that a sales team can take, especially as it grows. So typically we see that there's few top performers on a sales team. Well, what if we could capture all of the steps that that person is taking and make that scalable across the whole team? So it's just really important that as companies start adding team members, especially in the sales function, that there's agreement and alignment around how do we drive revenue in this organization.
I think it's interesting because when you're selling something, obviously, there are functional things that you do, but then you fill that function with your own personality, your own uniqueness. How do you distinguish between a process step and then something which is, it's just something that you do and you don't know how you do it, you don't know why you do it, you just do it and it produces some success?
Absolutely. And we see that a lot. So I think there is a data-informed answer to that question. And then there's also things that we do in selling that really are coming from our gut feel and coming from understanding our customer. So I think these really are two separate things. And when it comes to the softer side of sales, it really is all about understanding, what does this person need from me? I am here now to serve this person. What do they need from me? And I think those items can also be captured and can be repeatable for the company.
Yeah. And to add to that, to give a tangible example on Jennifer mentioned, it's what is your best performer doing and what needs to be translated to the rest of the team. A very tangible example that we commonly find, the best performers are extremely good at follow-up. This is consistent across the different companies. They're always telling us, oh, I immediately pick up the phone and I do this and this and this. And immediately we kind of look at across the team and we say, okay, your best performers doing this, maybe it needs to be a process across the team, that you have a phone follow-up or followed by email follow-up within this time frame, because this is your best performers behavior. And this is one theme that has consistently emerged for us when we work with our clients, just to give a tangible example.
And I think that's an excellent example because some people, when they approach selling, they do think that, well, some people, they're just born to sell and therefore they're the ones who, I can't be like that person. That's kind of the mindset that often comes in. But what you just said there, Alice, those practical things that we can all do if we're able to discipline ourselves, those then could be translated into our sales process.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. You guys do a lot of work on going into companies that have pre-existing sales processes. Where do you find the most common bottlenecks in a sales process?
Yeah. So when we work with clients, we are, like I mentioned, looking across all of the revenue generating processes. And there are 5 key places that we find bottlenecks, and we also call those revenue leaks because that's how they're showing up in the business. So it's number 1, not having the right focus. So we're investing in growth activities. Maybe we're going to trade shows or we're doing online campaigns, and we don't know the ROI of those programs at the end of the day. We don't understand how those are affecting revenue. We're seeing a lot of manual processes popping up that were probably generated in the early stage of the company. Those manual processes are not going to get the company where they need to go into their next phase of growth. So we're looking at where can we remove some of that friction in terms of manual process. We're also seeing, as the company grows, individual functions are optimized with technology, and that creates also a lot of bottlenecks across the process. So we want to make sure that technology that we're using across the growth function between marketing and sales, that it's connected and data can flow across those systems. And the last one that we just see is, frankly, data that is being used to make growth decisions that may not be accurate. It might not be timely. And we're using this data to make very, very important decisions. So we see sometimes there's just too much data. We can't derive an insight from it. Sometimes there's too little data. Sometimes the data just isn't accurate. and how are we using that data to make decisions around how to grow the company.
Okay, so this is really excellent. I'd like to start with the first one, if we might. You mentioned specifically not knowing the ROI of these programs. So in other words, we're throwing stuff up against the wall and we're hoping for the best. We're running around imitating what other people are doing because that's what we think is going to help to land a deal or a project. In your experience, what do the best companies do when they are putting these measurements in place to actually get something from those activities that they're doing and understand what's working?
Yeah. So there's two key things when we look at ROI. And we kind of call it as, what is the goal of this activity that you are doing? And what is the result? It is always good to take a step back and say, is this activity is to drive awareness? Awareness always also generates results in terms of revenue, but equate it so you set the right expectation, right? And sometimes companies go to events to meet with their existing partners, to network. And in that scenario, it is an investment to continue your current customer base and maintain a relationship. So it's always important to take one step back and say, what is our goal? What is the expectation in terms of result? And can we actually answer that question instead of manually pulling all the data pieces together? When you have the right foundation, you should be able to answer those questions.
So that's very excellent, because I think sometimes we try stuff and we get frustrated because it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work, whatever in our minds work means, I didn't go to that event and get a project opportunity. And the reason why is because that was never going to happen in the first place anyway. And you should have set your expectations correctly in terms of, just as you well described there, developing relationships or whatever the case may be. And I do think in sales, that's one of the big mistakes that we make, is we think that if I do this one activity, it will directly lead to a sale. But we know that that is not the case if we just step back and think about it a little bit.
Yeah. What we're doing today is going to impact the business 6 months from now. And I think that that's another important point. We also see that meet a person at an event that may become a customer, but they're not ready to become a customer right now. They're ready to become a customer in 6 months and 8 months, right? So how do we manage and maintain connection and relationship? How do we know when that person is ready to engage with us?
Let's talk about that then. So how do we know when that person is ready to engage with us?
It's a great question. So when you have the right foundation, and we call this, especially for the construction industry, modernization. We talked about manual process being a leak. Yeah. This is where you can really modernize to say, are they interacting with our content? And it is unique for each business. It is important to understand what content are they engaging and at what point are they ready and at what point are they ready to engage? Because if you really look at the landscape, 60 to 70% of the buying process, the individual has already done it. They're already on Google. They're already on your website. They've already observed you on LinkedIn. They've gathered a lot of information already before picking up the phone and talking to you. And in a lot of cases, what we see is in that process, when is the right time to intercept and say, hey, do you have questions that I can help you answer? So for that, you need to really understand what are the important points of interaction that eventually qualify them as, oh, this person is ready to interact, but they are in their process of investigation and decision-making. And modernization allows you to do that in a lot of situations. And this is where it will be very difficult if it is up to the salesperson to keep up with every single person on, oh, they're doing this, they're doing this. So this is where we find when the right systems are in place, it gives them a leg. It builds that competitive advantage for that company.
So by modernization, what you mean is having systems in place, using technology that alert me to when a person has looked at a piece of content or when they've gone to a certain part of my website. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. And typically, a lot of technologies allow you to do that. So they visited your blog or they visited your website. But where the clarity needs to happen is what content and series of content that they've engaged in, at what point do I engage? Because it's either people are like, oh, well, that person is engaging, or they engage too soon, or they wait for that person to reach out to them. It is important to understand when in their journey you should reach out. And it's very unique, right? For some companies, the person is looking at the product specs and checking out pricing. A combination of that is, okay, well, this is a good place for us to ask and reach out and, hey, do you have any questions that I can help you with? So it is very unique for each company because not every company does product and services.
Yes. Now that's very interesting. So you really have to do some hard work to understand how your clients engage with you as they are deciding whether or not to do business with you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That clarity is a game changer for companies when you get that level of clarity.
Okay. So how do I go about getting that level of clarity?
This is the hard work. And this is part of the sales process, actually. And that's actually a really great question. How do you get clarity? So when you understand what steps your sales team is taking to get to a revenue closing, the first steps when you have this lead or prospect that has been on your content and researching about you, the first step is to also getting clarity on, okay, in this part of the process, when they have visited XYZ and they have consumed our content and interacted, I should reach out. That becomes a sales process at the end of the day.
Yep. Okay. This is so critical. What you just said here is that people have done 60 to 70% of the work before they even contact you. And if your content and your upfront marketing is doing its job, then when people are in touch with you, then there's a comfort level with your company, which should help to facilitate improving your sales results. Am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And this is all about understanding your customer and understanding their needs and what do they need to consume? What answers do they need to have before they are ready to talk to you?
So interesting. The best interactions between someone who is selling and a potential client, the salesperson really understands the pains and the desires that each client experiences so that they're able to tailor their presentation to meet those particular, to alleviate the pain and also to meet the desires that they have.
Absolutely.
I'd like to talk about data here a little bit more. You talked a lot about data that is either inaccurate or is overwhelming. I think one of the things that causes people to be reluctant about engaging with technology is that it does produce all of this data, but what if I don't understand the data and I don't know where to look in the data to find what's actionable? So can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, for sure. So when we talk about data, we really talk about data that drives revenue in your organization. And we look at it as 4 key revenue levers. And there's a lot of data. You're right. Technologies in this day and age produce so much data. We're all in data overwhelm. But the analogy I'm going to use is we all probably use like 1% of our brain, and we are pretty powerful with just that. And the revenue levers do just that. So the 4 important ones in our perspective is the win rate, average deal size, average time to close, and then the key meetings that get you to revenue.
Okay. Win rate. In construction, that would be like hit rate. Win rate's good though too. That's nice and clear.
Yeah.
Average deal size. I get that. Time to close, you said.
Yeah.
And then the key meeting.
Yes. The key meetings that helps you to get to revenue. It could be 1 or 2, or it could be 3 important meetings that get you to revenue. But it's really, for example, for one client, it was actually a site visit. There was a complimentary site visit. That's how they started. So it's what starts that revenue generation process. And it's really bringing it down to what are the meetings that we should be doing today to get us to closing in 3 months, 6 months, a year from now.
Yep. That's really great. Question just popped into my head here. So you talk about key meetings. How do I know which meetings? Because sometimes maybe I close a deal and I have 2 meetings. Like someone just says, hey, Eric, I want you to build this project for me. And this is what the project is. And this is the amount. And we're going to go here in October. Can you do it? And then in other situations, it's like, we got to dance for a little bit. And then we've got to dine for a little bit, all that kind of stuff. So When you say key meetings, how do I know how many key meetings I need to have?
It really comes down to there's a formula behind it, right? Which is why we talked about the average deal size. And we talked about the win rate, which is how many customers do you need at the end of the day? So there's a formula with all these levers put together. And then you do the time to close. You understand. To give you an example, for
please.
It came down to they needed to do at least 2 scoping meetings per month to hit their revenue target, considering their win rate, considering their deal size. But it all started with a scoping meeting.
Yes, I get it. So it's very interesting because I know people listening to the show today, they may be looking at their backlog of projects and they're like, dude, I need to get some stuff in the door if I'm going to keep my people busy 6 months to a year from now. And I think it's so interesting that you talked about the hope, the possibility that I can actually identify specific actions that if I discipline myself to take those actions consistently, I can then expect a result.
Exactly. And if I can just add to this, this is really the difference between a KPI and a leading indicator, right? Because what we find is they might be measuring their teams on total meetings, let's just say, but that doesn't really tell us anything, right? So getting down to Alice's example, that was actually a leading indicator, right? That she was able to uncover in that specific company's process. So now we know exactly what to measure. And companies can then actually shift to measure what really matters. So moving from maybe what's more of a vanity KPI to a metric that is actually moving the business forward.
Okay, we must stop here and explore this. Tell me the difference between a key performance indicator and then what you called a leading indicator. What's the difference?
So a KPI can both be a leading and a lagging indicator at the end of the day. So a very easy example is forecast is a leading indicator. You're able to forecast your revenue. If your forecasting is done properly, you will know if you're going to reach your revenue goals this year or not.
Right.
Versus a win rate is a KPI that you're just monitoring.
Yes.
It's still a KPI.
Yep.
You could basically at the end of the year go, oh, I didn't hit my goals this year. Oh, my win rate was only 30%. It really doesn't move things in future if you are not actually moving it with forecast.
Okay. So in your formula where you had those 4 key revenue drivers, did you say?
Yeah.
Would it be correct to say that your key meetings are leading indicators, whereas your win rate is that lagging indicator?
It is a KPI. Yes. It's more like I would actually call the win rate a standard KPI. It just shows what's happening. It's not predicting the future for you. Right. You have to say, okay, for me to close 100,000 and work the same pipeline, I might have to increase my win rate to 50% from 30% to 50% to reach it. You have to move it versus the meetings. Let's say you set it to say, I am going to do 2 meetings every month. And you didn't hit the 2 meetings in February, for example. Right. Now it shows you're not going to hit your revenue. That's a leading indicator.
Yep. And this is vital because like you guys said, there's these vanity metrics or these, even a lagging indicator, they're obviously useful because they tell me what's happened in the past, but the leading indicator will tell me what's happening in the future.
In the future. That's it.
Yeah. And it's so vital that everyone's able to clearly identify that. So if I'm then able to identify those 4 things, then I should be able to capture those 4 things. How do I go about capturing them specifically? Tell me about that. How do you guys help people with that?
For sure. So there is a set of process that we go through in identifying what those key meetings are for the client. It is very unique. It is very unique to each business, and construction businesses, they all have their uniqueness. It's very unique, especially for the construction industry. So what we do as step 1 is understand what are all the steps and actions their sales team is taking to get to revenue. Yep. And then we start zoning back into, okay, so every time you do this meeting, this is the origin.
Yep.
And this is another key turning point in that process. And then we kind of like zone into those 2 meetings, and then we start working backwards to revenue goals. But that's how we identify the key meetings. It is important to just sit down, take a minute, and understand the steps your sales team is taking and what are those consistent steps.
Yes.
And kind of coming back to it to say, okay, every time we do this, there's actually, at the end of the day, based on the win rate, there's a deal or potentially a deal.
Yep. It's interesting. I work with a number of mechanical contractors, and they have, in many cases, 3 revenue streams where you have ground up construction, you have special projects, which are sort of smaller projects, and then you have service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those are like 3 unique businesses within one business, and each bucket needs its own sales process, its own data, and its own indicators.
Exactly. And the one common thing we see with construction industries, there is typically a rep that sometimes functions across 3 areas.
Mm.
And it's not clearly called out. They're navigating it. Whereas when you clearly call out, like these are 3 separate areas, the actions you take here versus the second area is completely different. It is important to call that out. And when you call it out and you start tracking it, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah. I can just imagine those unicorns that people have in a smaller company where they're selling all 3 of those in a mechanical contractor. It's crazy, but it's so important to be able to get from them what they're doing so that you can begin to build your sales processes if you want to grow your business.
Right.
Exactly. And you don't want to be caught in a situation where that person leaves, right? And you don't have it captured in any type of model. And how are you going to bring on the next person? We're going to have to go through that whole learning curve again. That person's going to have to come in and figure out that set of activities and steps.
Yeah. And it's interesting. What we're talking about here, it's not only about me landing work today, but it's also a succession planning piece, because a lot of construction companies, their key executives, the owners of the company, are driving revenue through their relationships. Mm-hmm. But if they want to be able to pass that company on to the next generation and scale the company, they have to be going through this process of rationalizing their sales activities.
Absolutely. And they really need to start now doing that. Mm-hmm. And we've seen from our experience, executives in the industry feeling like they've left it a little bit too long. So how do we get ahead? And that's really where we come in to help guide them on all of the steps that they need to take to do this, so they don't have to go in trial and error, because it can really take years if you're setting out alone without a partner to provide that guidance and that expertise.
When it comes to a company that, let's say, has a complex sales process, selling a construction project, a large project, let's say you're selling a 10, 15, 20, 30, $100 million project, that's an incredibly complex sale. How long does it take you guys to help people to establish those sales processes and begin to get their arms around what they're doing so that they can do it better?
Yeah, for sure. So when we begin to engage with a client, we are going to spend a couple of months really working through, where are you at today? Everyone's starting from a different place. So really looking at their business, looking at their business model, at how revenue flows through their organization, where the bottlenecks are happening. And then we're going to lay out a very tailored plan to say, okay, you were here, right? Maybe you want to double your revenue over the next 2 to 5 years. What are the things that we're going to need to do methodically to get you from where you are now to where you need to be? And the one thing I'll just add to this is there's a lot of companies that have grown in, let's say, like 50 million, 75 million, but they want to go bigger. They want to scale into that 100, 250 million plus. And they know what got them to their level of growth today is not going to get them to that next phase. So I'll just call that out as that's typically a characteristic of an executive team that we would work with. They understand that we need to do things differently, and we'd like to bring in an expert to help us do that because we need to get to this next phase.
That's very interesting. Excellent. Now, you do work with folks around what you guys call unique revenue drivers. So I'd like to explore that a little bit. What do you actually mean by a unique revenue driver? What is that?
When we talked about the revenue levers, and within the revenue levers, we talked about the meetings, right? The meetings are the unique revenue drivers.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
It is very unique. Like we talked about, per company, it's different. Per service category, it's different. It's really understanding and getting to the bottom of what is that driver for your business. There is also, when we say unique revenue drivers, it's not just the origin point. We're also looking at how do you retain customers? So how do you renew customers? What is the origin point for that?
Okay, so let's talk about that. Yeah, so construction is so fascinating because I land a project, I ink a project. Let's say I'm going to be working on it for 6 months to a year. I'm selling throughout that whole time that I'm actually building the project, and I may have an ongoing relationship either from a service perspective or from another opportunity with that same client to build a different project.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the types of meetings I should be having as I'm going through the process of building a project and even wanting to cultivate that long-term relationship.
We definitely see a flavor here depending on the company. Every company has its own flavor that they bring in. So one company that we work with, their flavor is they do regular golf tournaments with their clients.
I see.
Another flavor that we have seen is check-ins. So they have a systematic, this company, it's also construction. They are very systematic to the point they have their people check in with their customers, get some surveys going on to say, are they happy? Are they not happy? What do we need to do to navigate to make sure that the relationship is on the right track?
Right. Let me ask you this. It's really interesting because when you're building a project, you have direct contact through, let's say, your project managers or your superintendents or your foreman with the clients or with your project partners. And in that contact, there's often a lot of conflict and challenge and difficulties. Every construction project has it. Yeah. Is it useful to bring in someone from your company who's not directly involved in the day-to-day project in order to interact with a client a little bit and provide a buffer there? Or should you just stick with the folks who are on the front line? What have you seen there?
So we've definitely seen the executive team, the leadership team, they have a presence in that relationship. We've definitely seen that. And it doesn't have to be one-on-one is our experience in companies that can manage. So there are clients that service multi-million dollar deals.
Right.
So you service that relationship very differently.
Right.
But there's also, we talked about modernization. How do you service all your clients similarly? And how do you get all their pulses? Because again, like you said, there is a number of people that are in the front end doing their job. It could be general contractors, your foreman, go down the list, project coordinators, project managers. So what we have seen is that survey, and it has to be timed properly. You have to understand when in that project's timeline, you get a survey out to check the temperature.
Yep.
It gives the leadership team a good visibility into, do we need to do something differently here? And typically people fill out surveys when there's bad news or when there's exceptionally good news.
Right.
When it's going okay, what we've seen is people are fine. But when there's something that they are disgruntled about, they will let you know. They take it as an opportunity to let you know.
Okay. So those revenue drivers are the key meetings. And that's a really great insight. So I would say to anyone listening here today, one of the key takeaways that you should really put on your list is to sit down and identify those key meetings that lead to revenue. Get together with your top sales people and figure out what they're doing in those key meetings. And then figure out how you're going to communicate that and teach that to other people so that you can get some sort of replication, even if it's only 80 to 90% of what your superstars are doing.
Absolutely. It gives your team an equal playing field. You created a better playing field for your team rather than a person running 50 yards ahead of you.
Yeah.
You know?
We've had clients describe it as everyone's playing with the same deck of cards now.
Okay, that's beautiful. And I think it also does, for one, it gives confidence to people that if I do this, then this will happen. It also removes excuses from people because oftentimes we're thinking, well, that's her. I mean, she's just a baller. She just knows how to close business, right?
Yeah.
And so that removes my excuse in the sense that, okay, I may not be quite like her in terms of her ability to win business, but I can surely do, like I said, 80% of what she's doing and then be successful.
Exactly. And that idea of relying on her is not scalable.
Yeah, that's very good. So if you're looking to scale, you have to do something other than she's my unicorn, let her go out and kick some butt. We have to be able to do something different than that. That's good.
We have to be able to capture it in some type of a scalable model. So new team members can easily be onboarded. And even as the company grows, we hear a lot of companies say, well, the way we got to 20, 30 million is we just hired new sales reps. Right. So we'll just go out and hire new sales reps.
Yeah.
And you think, a new sales rep, 100, 150K, I don't know what you call it, 7+ months to onboard appropriately. Right. And do you really need more sales reps, or do you just need to get clarity on the activities that your existing sales reps need to take?
Beautiful. I really like that. Do you need more sales reps, or do you just need to get clarity on the existing activities? Because in that way, your sales reps can be working more efficiently and smarter and therefore produce more revenue. I love that. Okay,
absolutely. So you can potentially be growing your revenue significantly without adding resources.
Hey, if I can grow revenue without adding overhead, that's absolutely awesome. Okay, so let's go on to this idea of achievable revenue targets. What do you mean by an achievable revenue target?
Yeah, for sure. So we see different behaviors here. So one of the common behaviors we see is, okay, we reached, let's say 40 million this year, and we want to get to 80 million. Typically they shoot and say, okay, I'm just going to add a couple more salespeople and we're going to shoot for 80 million. There is a level of detail that has to be looked upon to set achievable targets. The difference between an achievable target is you've worked backwards versus relying on your players. And I think we just talked about, you have a unicorn player and I just need to bring another unicorn player. And how would you know that player is a unicorn player or not? You can't. Only time will tell. So now the fact that you have clarity on your revenue drivers, and then you start working backwards. So my win rate is 50%. I need to close 4 clients. So I need to be working at least 8. And does my team have the capacity to handle those 8 prospects? They probably do. In a lot of cases, what we find is their current team has capacity if you focus them properly.
That's beautiful. I think that's a tremendous insight there, because what'll happen is you'll hire your salesperson, right? And then you'll go back to your real job of building projects and hope for the best. And then 6 months later, this guy sucks. He didn't reduce any projects, so I have to go get another person.
Yeah.
Instead, what you just described is so key. If you do this, then this will happen. Therefore, I'm going to hold you accountable for these activities.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it gives the managers a way to coach their team, right? And it takes the emotion out of it. We're now using data to clearly communicate the expectation.
I think that's a key insight here, is that if you want to grow revenue, it's not necessarily by adding more salespeople, but it's by improving your sales processes, the data that you're getting, and understanding what it is that you need to do to get those revenue generating events going. That's really excellent.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate your guys' insights here. Alice, Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit more about Digital Magenta, what it is that you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a revenue growth consultancy, and we work with our clients to help them maximize and optimize their revenue. And we do that by looking at where the leaks showing up. So let's plug the leaks. Let's get clarity on what's actually driving the business forward, so we can organize people, systems around those things.
Excellent. And how can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So they can look us up on LinkedIn. So I'm Jennifer Applin. I think I'm the only Jennifer Applin on LinkedIn, Jennifer Applin, Digital Magenta. You can also send me an email, jennifer@digitalmagenta.com.
Excellent. Excellent. We will have links in the show notes then to the website and to your LinkedIn profile. Just as we're wrapping up here, what are 3 things that I can do immediately? Let's say I run a construction company and I do want to grow revenue, and feel free to summarize what you've already said. What are 3 action items you would recommend a construction company owner does right now in order to begin to take that journey to improving revenue and landing the right projects with the right people?
Yeah, for sure. So number 1, I would ask yourself, do I have a growth mindset? Having a growth mindset means that we're open to looking at things differently. And we're open to looking at what is going right in the organization, but where are things falling down? And that's really the second thing that I would say is looking honestly at the business. And the third thing is, do I need help to get from where I am now to where I want to go? And if the answer to that question is yes, then we would gladly have a conversation and provide any advice we can on what they might want to be thinking about or looking at.
Yeah. And I think on the help part, I just want to say that you need help when you have a sense that things should be different and you want them to be different. But because you're so busy doing other things, you just don't have the time to give sufficient energy and focus on that particular item that you need help with.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, this has been awesome. Alice, Jennifer, I love talking about sales, so I'm really pleased that you guys came on the show. We're going to put all the links in the show notes so that people can get in touch with you. I just have one last question here. You guys are up in Calgary, right?
That's right.
Okay, so if I'm in Calgary, what is the one restaurant I need to hit in Calgary?
Oh, there's so many.
I know. Everyone says that, but I should have prepped you beforehand with the question. But I didn't. So let's say I'm just up there for a business meeting. I've got a couple of days. I've got a free night. What's the best restaurant I need to hit?
Okay, if you like Italian, I'm going to go with Mercato. It's on 4th Street. It is the best Italian I have ever had, including inside of Italy.
Really? Mercato, how do you spell that?
Mercato.
Okay, good. Mercato in Calgary, if you like Italian. That is good. Alice, I saw you were endorsing that, so we don't need to go any further.
Totally.
Awesome. So if you're in Calgary, Mercato, I'll put a link in the show notes to that restaurant as well. Guys, I really appreciate your time. This was super awesome. Thank you for joining me today. And I do wish you all the success with your business.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you for having us. Yeah. Great talking to you.
Yeah,
awesome.
Great conversation.
Hi, this is Eric. Before you jet away, I just want to thank you for listening to Construction Genius today. If you are the owner of a construction company and you would like some help clarifying your strategy for approaching the market in terms of sales, reach out to me on my website. I have a framework that I use with my clients to help them to put together business development strategies. And my website is constructiongenius.com. And then you can just go /contact, fill in your contact information. Let me know that you'd like some help with putting together a sales strategy, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. Thank you again for listening, and please feel free to share this with other folks, this interview. And also, one last request. Could you please give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts? That helps Construction Genius to spread throughout the internet. And that's really what we want to do so that we can provide more value to construction leaders like yourself. Thanks very much, and I'll catch you on the next episode.